Hey, welcome to the Lowdown. I'm here with Rebecca and Megan Lovell. I said it wrong, even though we just.
When the pressure's on, it always
I'm
happens.
so
No worries.
sorry as it came out. From Larkin Poe. You are Larkin Poe, I think, at least to most people.
Mhm.
So thank you. Welcome. And thanks for joining me.
Oh, our pleasure.
Thanks for having
Um,
us.
so you two have been on the road since you were quite young, young teens, I think, right?
That's correct.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'm thinking this is probably like the longest time you've not been on the road since you were in elementary school, more or less, right?
Yeah, this is the longest we've been home in 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how's that going? Aside from the music, it's hard for a lot of people who are just so used to being moving all the time to be so.
It's
I mean,
it's very surreal right now.
Yeah, it's been an adjustment period. I feel like we've settled into it, but with the settling comes this sense of a loss of callus because touring for a living to make music, especially when you're making roots American music, you're certainly not touring in the Ritz. And so you have to have a certain callus against the discomfort of being on the road and waking up at 4 a.m. to catch flights and not getting to bed until 2 and then waking up at 6 again to get on the road.
So we're weakened right
So we're
now.
weak. We feel weak right now because we get to choose when we go to bed and when we wake up. It's pretty lush.
yeah. What about literal calluses, fingers? How are your fingers doing? Like because
We've
it's
been playing a lot. If
A
anything,
lot.
we've been more busy with we made a new album. We've been really active on social media doing live stream concerts and making videos, just trying to stay connected with people. So I would say musically and vocally, we're actually still pretty good in shape.
Maybe better.
I don't know. Though we did do a live stream where we filmed for 6 hours continuously in order to create 2 shows.
Mhm.
And at the end of that day, from headbanging, my neck was so sore. So in that
I'm so
respect,
tired.
little out of shape, little
Yeah.
out of shape.
Yeah, because I mean, I've been playing a lot in my room here, but when first time I got out and played a gig with people, I was like an hour into it, and I was like, oh wow, I just hadn't, it wasn't anything unusual, just I hadn't done it in a long time, and
Yeah.
you press the strings a little harder, when you're playing in front of people, right?
True.
It's true.
So let's talk about your new record, but first, your last one that's out and been released is "Self-Made Man," which
Mhm.
is a great album, and I think the title is a little bit ironic coming from you two, right? Uh,
Slightly. It's yes, the album is Self-Made Man, and I think the inspiration behind ultimately calling the album Self-Made Man was in fact to take a dig at the patriarchy a little bit because, you know, I have said the phrase self-made man countless times as a compliment to people whom I respected, mostly males, without ever having given it a second thought that I was gender qualifying success.
Mhm.
And that's problematic when inequality is wallpapered into the background and you don't even feel it's in the room with you. So when I had the realization, I brought it to Megan and we were like, dude, we got to write a song. And once we'd written the song, when the song is titled She's a Self-Made Man, we decided that we might as well just go whole hog and, just
Yeah, we
ruffle
like-
as many feathers as possible.
We like to poke fun at it a little bit.
Yeah.
and is it representative of how you think of yourself, self-made women?
Yeah. I mean, I think, especially in today's industry of the music business, you really got some big boots to fill in terms of all the hats you got to wear. So we started our record label in 2017. We've produced all our own albums. On a lot of the albums we've played all our own bass and drums and
Yeah.
keyboards. So I do think that there's an element of do-it-yourselferism
Yeah.
that we really champion, and I think we're proud of that in ourselves, and also we want to inspire that in others. And I think especially females in the industry, the statistics reflect that women, in terms of behind the scenes roles, production,
2%
producers,
are
engineers,
producing.
Yeah.
So it's something that we would like to see, ladies take charge of more.
So how does self-producing work? Like, are you two always in sync? Because one of the advantages of having an outside producer is just an outside voice to say, no, that song's really good, or that song's not really as good as you think it is, or
Yeah.
just because it's hard to have perspective on your own work. So do you serve that role for each other, and are there times where you bang heads because one of you
Yeah.
like something.
We're definitely not always in sync.
No, I mean, we're on the same page, but maybe not the same word.
Yeah.
We try to take ego out of it as much as possible. I think that's kind of the key, is you just have to let the best idea win. And you do have a gut feeling about what is right, and what is a good song. And we do kind of keep each other honest.
Yeah. And I think Megan is definitely, our gut guy in a lot of sense of the word. When it comes down to repertoire selection or big picture moves, I really do rely on Megan's feeling. Because I'm a definite, like, if you put me between the stalks of the plow, I will pull the plow. I'm a very hardworking mule, but sometimes I can be so focused on just going that I lack some of the bigger picture stuff.
Because Rebecca has taken on a lot of the pre-production for the albums, like programming, drums and bass, and
sussing out the arrangements.
Because we have pretty much covered most of the bases as far as the instrumentation on the albums as well.
But case in point, with this most recent album, Kindred Spirits, we actually made the album twice because I had an idea as to how the album should be made. And then we finished it and we realized that in fact, it was not the album that we needed to have made. And so at Megan's behest, we made it all again.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Literally like every A to Z, just redid it.
Yes.
Well, hold on.
But we redid it. I mean, we totally ripped it apart from the inside out and changed the premise with which we made. But I think it was by far for the better. But I mean, my feelings were super hurt because I felt, initially for the first couple of hours after we made the decision, I was definitely smarting, But you just gotta put that, that attitude in the back seat and figure out what's the right move.
Right. Wait, I want to hear some more details about that. But first, we haven't discussed that yet. So let's make sure everyone knows what we're talking about. So Kindred Spirit is coming out November 20th.
Correct.
Release, and that's an album of acoustic based. I don't know if it's all acoustic. You must have dropped some electric instruments in there, right? But it's acoustic based, all cover songs, right?
Yeah, which was a first for us. We're traditionally an all original band, but we do have a very strong presence online with our cover video series on YouTube. And so people in our fan base were really requesting recorded versions of the songs. So while we're home, and we've been in quarantine, we have a home studio. My husband's a musician, and he dropped some cash on some really nice microphones. We decided we should do it at home. And yeah, we initially struck out to make Kindred Spirits in the style of previous Larkin Poe records. And we got through with the process. We had all 11 songs recorded. Well, that's not true. We actually shook up the arrangement for the next album, but we had most of the songs recorded in kind of Larkin Poe fashion with some programmed drums. And we decided that wasn't the move. And we set up in the basement. And we were strictly all acoustic, except for the fact that Megan is, of course, on lap steel. So that's, strictly speaking, not
it's baked into the pie.
But but we did lean into all live, us sitting in a room together and just letting it be what it was, be very raw.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I want to talk a little bit more about that. I want to ask you, Megan, about the lap steel, but let's hold off on that for a second.
Okay.
So, Nights in White Satin is the first song that's out. Everybody can find that on your favorite streaming services or on Larkin Poe website, on YouTube, etc. So, and you mentioned that you had this series online, which is, I think, the first time I really started seeing you guys with some of those. So let's just go back to when you first started doing these covers online. Were they just for fun? Like, were they calculated at all that you thought you'd grab people's attention, or were they just songs you liked and it grew?
I mean, yeah, there was an element of calculation because, of course, when you're touring on the road and you're coming into cities that you've never been before, and you realize that, a lot of the people don't know who you are. You, of course, want to use any means. If you're a smart, if you're a smart person, you want to use whatever means available to you to introduce yourself to people.
But in the beginning, it definitely kind of took us by surprise because
that they took off so much.
Yeah, because we kind of just released it on a whim. The first few cover videos, and they kind of went viral. So at that point, we were like, well, this obviously people are intrigued by this, so we should do it more. So in that way, it's calculated. But at first, it was just us wanting to learn songs that we loved and grew up listening to.
Yeah, that's great. So, I'm an Allman Brothers guy. I wrote One Way Out, the book about them. And so when you guys did One Way Out, and I'm sure you already know this, but that just ricocheted around Allman Brothers fan world. Um, I don't know, like I don't want to make a bad metaphor, but whatever, people really loved it and saw it. And of course, when you're playing slide guitar at all in any non totally traditional blues idiom, Dwayne becomes a factor. So how much were the Allman Brothers an huge influence on you? And then just going broader, like how much do these songs you're covering represent music that was important to you as you were learning?
We grew up listening to the Allman Brothers, and their dad was always cranking Allman Brothers. I mean, they came out of Macon, of course, not far from where we grew up. So we always thought about them as kind of,
Spirit animals.
spirit animals.
But also, every song that we cover for our series is nostalgic to us. We very rarely do we pick songs that we don't already know, at least in passing, kind of like, at Christmas when you sing the first verse of the Christmas song and you realize you don't quite know the rest of it. That's kind of how we feel about a lot of the songs that we ended up picking. They were definitely familiar, old friends, but wanted to work them out. And I think being likened to the Allman Brothers is a really big compliment to us. I mean, I think they're more jam bandy than we have ever been, but in terms of the premise, their foundations, in American roots rock, blues influence, definite. Yeah.
And definitely listening to people like the Allman Brothers definitely led us backwards to discovering more about blues music, and like who might the Allman Brothers have been listening to, who were they influenced by. And we went back and started listening to like the Sun House and the Skip James, and just really loving the original slide players as well.
Right. And of course there's also the sibling aspect of it.
Of course.
Not that there aren't, other examples as well, but
they're one of the iconic pairs for sure.
Yeah.
And you seem to get along a lot better than the other famous Atlanta siblings, the Robinsons.
I know. I can't bear that.
We get along really well.
Yeah.
So how did you come to lap steel? And I know you guys started as playing bluegrass with Third Sister, right? So does she still play music?
No. It wasn't the life for her.
Right. So did you come to lap steel from dobro, like from playing dobro and bluegrass?
I did. Kind of even going back further, we started playing classical violin. That was our original introduction to music, violin and piano. And we went to a bluegrass festival, were bitten by the roots American music bug, like immediately just fell head over heels in love. And I tried to play some fretted instruments, like mandolin and banjo, guitar, and it didn't quite resonate with me until I saw a resonator, and that resonated with me. I listened to a lot of Jerry Douglas, and I didn't exactly know what instrument that was until I saw it being played, and then once I made the connection, it was all over. I just fell in love. And then it was an obvious move to kind of move over to lap steel when we were plugging in, becoming more electrified.
Mm-hmm. And do you like some of the overtones you can do with the lap steel, and the way you can distort it, like more in line with an electric guitar while still obviously having that dobro in slide?
Oh my gosh, it's the perfect combination for me. I love dobro, but my true love is lap steel, because I did grow up listening to a lot of like Derek Trucks, and like loving the more vocal quality of an electrified instrument. It's really powerful.
Mm-hmm. So I lived in China for 3.5 years, and I had a band there with 3 Chinese guys, one of whom was a brilliant lap steel player. So I had this like deep attraction. So after we're done, I want to get good email or something for you guys. I want to send you a couple things of him.
Cool.
And Rebecca, could you move your head a little bit, because when you bent over before, I couldn't see before what the picture behind you is. It's a photo of Dwayne. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that photo. I could only see the edges of it when you moved before. So, that's what you have hanging in what room? Whose house are you at now?
We're at my house, and in here we have a picture of Elvis, we have Dwayne, we have Jeff Beck.
This is the dining room, so there's plenty of good pictures.
The Hall of Fame.
So what other songs on Kindred Spirits can you talk about? I don't know how much you want to reveal. It comes out again, we'll say November 20th.
Yeah. Well, the next song that we have coming out off of Kindred Spirits is Fly Away by Lenny Kravitz. And this is one of my favorites because I think whenever you're able to really, truly reinterpret a song, that's when it's a very fascinating version, when you're not just repeating as rote how the original artist performed the song, when you can kind of unleash some new element. And I think that we did that pretty cool with Fly Away. We turned into more of a swampadelic blues situation. And I think when I grew up listening to, Fly Away on the radio, and I remember it, and maybe I'm misremembering this, but I'm pretty convinced that Delta or like Southwest or somebody used it as an ad campaign, like, I want to get away. And you're like, party town, yeah, let's go on vacation. But when we've sung this song, it feels a lot more desperate to me. It's not so much I'm stuck and I'm trapped and I need to get out. And so having that different, like, oh, it's the same set of words, but you're looking at them from a different vantage point. That feels really intriguing and like you're doing something new with the song.
It's kind of a theme of the record, I think.
Yeah, we just made everything way sadder. We just found
the sad tension,
tragic. Yeah, bless us.
Well, something I was going to ask that's directly related to that. When you're doing these covers, how important is it for you to go back to the original? Do you sit there and break it down and go, oh, wait a second, there's this G chord there we never noticed? Because like you mentioned before that there are these like Christmas songs that you think you know. And then when you really try to learn it, you're like, oh, there's a whole bridge to this song I never really paid attention to. So how much does it matter to you, and how much do you want to just say, well, whatever, I'll do it by memory and we'll do our own thing?
I think it's a healthy portion of each attitude. It's, a lot of reverence for the person who created the song, who wrote the song, and that is very rewarding to dig inside some as a writer or a musician or what have you. But there's also, I think, this other half of the attitude in which you don't want to keep something behind a glass case. Like, you need to let it live and breathe, and that means honestly reinterpreting and being willing to change lyrics if you need to, subtly, to make certain shifts, because what we've experienced over the years is a lot of sexism within songs. Going back and learning certain rock songs, particularly, there are certain bands that we can't cover because the lyrics are just so wildly sexist, and you can't even imagine how you would fit it into.
Yeah, it's not something that we can imagine singing.
Yeah,
really.
But being females and and kind of moving into definitely a more dominated field of rock and blues, it's interesting to give some of these songs a feminine perspective and to figure out how to sing them authentically. So it's been a bit of each.
It happens really organically, especially at this point, because we've done over 100 of these. And so it happens really quickly now. We just sit down and it falls into place pretty quickly.
Yeah, the way is made clear.
Can you think of an example of a song and how you tweaked it to make it feel more comfortable and relevant to you in that way?
Oh, yeah. Well, I can read you right now. So the album, we've released a previous version of my laptop. Hold on. Sorry. We have you propped on a laptop screen, the 20th century and whatnot. So we did a version of Who Do You Love by Bo Diddley. And if you go back and you reference his original lyrics, there's like some violence in some of the lyrics, and especially towards a female. And we're just like, that's not our speed. But there's so many other cool words that to me do not feel violent or aggressive that we wanted to pull up anyway. So we wrote an additional verse, part of a verse onto, we kept the first verse, I walk 47 miles of barbed wire, cobra snake for a necktie, all that stuck. But then he transitions into tombstone hand in a graveyard mine. I think he says, I'm 21, but I don't mind dying, and I'm 29. So I said 29 and I don't mind dying. Yeah. And then we wrote two fresh lines. I'm packing a punch like a little pearl piece, that brimstone fire going to cut through the grease. So trying to write it in the spirit of something that feels like fits with the imagery of the rest of the song, but doesn't resort to like backhanding a chick. They're just like, I'm not going to sing about that. No way.
Right. It's funny because, you know, a couple of years ago, I did some vocal lessons to just try to, you know, improve. And I was working with a young woman about your guys' age, and she didn't really know the music. And so we were working on Statesboro Blues. And she was like, what's with these lyrics? Like, you know, if you can't make a baby, your sister Lucille said she wanted, like the guy saying, I'll just take your sister, you know? And I was like, you know, song was written in 1928. And she's like, yeah, but you're singing it in 2018. Like, are you really it was interesting because some of these songs, you know, are so ingrained that you kind of forget some of those implications. And so having a fresh ear listen to them from a modern perspective, it can be enlightening.
Yeah. And all things in moderation, right? Because I mean, revisionist history does not work, and you have to hold space for the way things were, and to allow that to guide us and be a signpost for how we move forward into the future. But when it comes down to tweaking a few lyrics, I'm on board, you know. And there's certain bands we just don't cover, and you just leave it alone, and you let, you know, them occupy that zone, and you find the people that you want to celebrate, you know, what songs you want to celebrate.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I played Good Morning Little Schoolgirl for years, and somebody just recently, you know, a couple of years ago, somebody was like, "You really want to sing that song?" And I was like, "Well, the riff is so much fun to play, you know."
Yeah. Well, similarly, dude, we were listening to My Sharona, and we are like, "Oh, that'd be so funny because like we're all in lockdown because of Corona." And like you could make a joke, but then when you actually start reading the words, you're like, "Yo, Lee, no way, can't do that."
So you had mentioned before, I think that one of that Kindred Spirit was actually sort of an outgrowth of being off the road. And did I get that right? So were you saying that if you hadn't been off the road and locked down now, that you wouldn't have done this album?
Yeah, we wouldn't have not time this year.
We wouldn't have had time. Yeah, we would have been solidly on the road from about May 1st onward, or before that, midway through April.
Yeah.
Anyway, we would be gone right now.
Yeah.
I think it would have happened at some point, but certainly not this soon.
Sure.
So now that you've recorded these songs, and whenever you do get back on the road, hopefully sooner than later, will you incorporate more of them into your sets? Because now they're not just covers, they're an album you've recorded. Does that change the way you look at them in terms of how much you want to perform them?
We haven't talked about that, actually.
I kind of see them having their own little world that they kind of live online. And we might work a few into the set. Like, throughout the years, we have done covers on stage a good bit throughout the years.
Yeah, but it's an interesting, like, the duality of what we do as Larkin Poe, because when we tour, we're definitely like a full-blown rock outfit, you know. And so a lot of like the more touching, sentimental, even, you know, bluegrass pieces of music that harken back to who we are as individuals, it's harder to find a place for them within, like, hey, we're playing a rock show, we're like gonna break it down and like have an acoustic. It's a bit of a disparate thing, but who knows? Like, we could possibly rework some of them.
Maybe we'll do a Kindred Spirit tour with just the two of us.
Hey,
you never know.
You never know.
Because I feel like your music actually has slowly, in a way, like it's progressed towards getting a little harder edged, right? I mean, Self-Made Man is a little bit more consistent, like got an edge to it than you know, the album's previous works. And I mean, that maybe is a result of what you're saying, playing live so much and being, you know, performing tends to bring out that edge, right?
Yeah. Self-Made Man was a response to all the touring we did in 2019 because we played so much that year, and we are a very loud band when we're on the road, and we wanted the album to kind of be represented.
Are there other bands around now, or other acts, I should say, who you feel Kindred Spirit to use your phrase, like that you feel you're part of something with?
Yeah.
One lives in this house.
Yeah, Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown is definitely someone who I feel very in simpatico with. But there's a lot of artists. I mean, I think we are in a renaissance of, you know, roots American music rights now. I feel that way. It may not actually be true, but my perception is there's a lot more bands that are dipping into, you know, the source musics of of early rock and roll and blues, and anybody
like
from
Fantastic Negrito,
yeah,
or Gary Clark Jr.
a lot of contemporaries who I feel very in step with, and it's nice to be a part of a rank moving forward, you know, and paying homage to the past and trying to bring it up to date with you know with the next generation, specifically trying to get younger people to take a minute and slow down and listen to something that really has got some substance to it and cultural significance.
And Tyler's a great guitar player.
Yeah.
Did you guys meet through music? And like, what if you you know, really liked someone, you started getting involved with them, and you didn't respect them as a musician? Could you continue a relationship with them?
No, not for me. I think, and that sounds very snide for me to say, that being the case, because it's all relative, right? Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But Tyler and I did meet through a write. We were hooked up by a producer who said, "Oh my gosh, you guys really got to meet. And I know this guy. You should write songs with him." And it didn't quite happen. So we became pen pals for like a year before we ever actually met. So we were just really, really good friends and had a lot in common with the music that we were both interested in. But then also, I think in terms of work ethic, like Tyler is really one of the hardest working dudes that I know, and I really respect that about him.
Yeah, so your original connection actually was music, somebody saying you guys got to meet to work together, not you got to meet.
Yeah, and funnily, and this is something I wasn't privy to until after the fact, but that producer, who shall remain anonymous, actually sent a Dropbox folder of like probably 35 or 40 of my work tapes of songs to Tyler, which, you know, is somewhat of a breach of etiquette. That's a big old fat breach of etiquette. But Tyler listened to all the songs and then started stalking Larkin Poe on YouTube. And so I was not privy to any of that whenever we became, you know, pen pals. But in hindsight, it makes a lot of sense.
It's so cool to work together now, because he actually engineered the album, like we were saying.
Yeah, for Kindred Spirits, he engineered that album here at the house.
So he's become a little bit of what I was saying before, of an outside perspective, although it's, you know.
No, he maintains that he just turns on the mics and makes sure that whatever we do is captured. I don't think that he necessarily wants to step into that arena with us in terms of having an artistic opinion.
Having the mics placed properly is important also.
It's key. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of making records, it's like, I think engineers are so underrated. We've worked on the previous 3 Larkin Poe records with Roger Allen Nichols, and he engineered. And
it's a huge deal.
Way more than an engineer, you know. Somebody who helps you achieve the tones you're looking for. They're definitely an unofficial member of the band.
Well, guys, thank you very much, and good luck with this. I can't wait to hear the rest of it, and for everyone else to hear it, and to get back on the road, because I want to see you live again, and also because that means that we'll all be back out on the road and doing what we love to do, you know, which is play music and listen to music. And also, I got to tell you, I spoke to my friend Richard Brent at the Big House Museum, Allman Brothers Museum in Macon, just before I spoke to you, and told him I'd be speaking to you. And he said there's an open invitation. He wants you guys at the Big House.
Oh, amazing.
That's
awesome. Epic.
Yeah, they're big fans. They'll open it for you, give you a private tour anytime you want. So,
well, thank you for making that connection. It's a real treat to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay, stopped recording, I think.